injured player back, leading the way for another. And it's 26-3 49ers.
Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
That's Joe Davis, Fox Sports, calling the Deebo Samuel touchdown run. All right, let's welcome in John Dickinson, 49ers reporter, Warriors reporter. He was at Chase Center last night, but we're going to talk to him about the San Francisco 49ers. Let me start out by saying hello, JD, and what was the biggest difference you saw in the Warriors yesterday as opposed to the previous 3 weeks?
The 49ers, right?
Bad,
yeah, the Niners. Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah, the Niners, and yeah, yesterday the first game that I didn't cover in person among all of the games to this point, with the Warriors obviously having the heavy weekend. Looking forward to be back in Seattle on Thanksgiving when the Niners are going to be there. So just throw that out there right off the top here. But biggest difference offensively, Kyle Shanahan had all his chess pieces, and we got into it after the game in Cleveland as I was coming back and after the game in Minnesota, just about the fact that things look a little bit different when you take even one skill player away. And, it was, Deebo obviously being out. I think McCaffrey was less than 100%. He may still be less than 100%, but he's closer to 100% than he was, I think, in the Minnesota or Cincinnati games. Going back to the last two. And then you get Trent Williams back as well, which I think just opens up so many different things that the 49ers can do, in particular in the run game. I thought Jalen Moore did fine when he filled in for Trent Williams, but Trent Williams is a dominant run blocker, and it really helps set up everything that the 49ers like to do, knowing that they have him as somebody that can get out and lead on those big runs, like the one to Deebo Samuel that you guys played the highlight of from Fox coming in here. So to me, offensively, it was all the chess pieces were back, which allowed, and forgive me for saying this because I hate this term, It allowed Kyle Shanahan, but I'm going to say it anyway, it allowed Kyle Shanahan to get in his bag again, right?
There it is.
Because he had everybody. And so offensively, it's almost, and this is how I'm going to look at him moving forward. When they have all their guys, and I know, Steiny, you said something similar earlier, when they have all their guys, then it's an elite offense. If you take even one away, then we're going to have a conversation given that week about whether they can even be a functional winning offense. So it's kind of extremes, but I think that's what they've proven to this point. And then defensively, it was just they looked fresher. I think Chase Young being on the team looked like it lit a fire under Cleveland Ferrell, who'd been absent. Nick Bosa looked reinvigorated, and they were doing a lot of 4- and 5-man rushes, 5-down linemen or just the standard 4-down linemen, and they were getting home. I mean, that was the thing. Like, it wasn't you getting close and they're getting rid of it. They're getting home. They're sacking the quarterback. And I think where the offense and defense work together, the complementary football, Niners come out, they get the lead, they get a couple stops, they start forcing turnovers. And this is, for this year to this point, fellas, a front-running team. They're front-runners. They need to get ahead. They need to play from ahead. Haven't been as good when they get behind and they have to go score late. That just hasn't worked out for them so far this year. But they got back on schedule yesterday, which I think was the biggest key. And, it really started with, I think, having all the players back on offense and then the defensive line dominating the game like we've seen the 49er defensive lines be able to do it as they've been making these runs toward being championship contenders.
No doubt, Jay. You just covered it all, and I agree with everything you said. I got to be careful here because I got to let you know I called out Wilkes in the sense that I thought it was a bad look that, his coach or employer would tell him to come on the sideline. But I'm trying to divvy out credit because he deserves it with how his unit played. But, JD, do you think there's any coincidence, the fact that he was on the sideline and all of a sudden they got after it? Or is it just what you said? They were rested. They had a new toy in Chase Young. I saw him come out with 5 D linemen, which we saw Cleveland and many do to them. But they hit Trevor Lawrence 10 times to me, this has to be sustainable, and it's kind of, you tell me if I'm off, it's kind of wiped out the last 3 weeks if they remain healthy.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, we've seen the 49ers be a lot worse than 5-3 after 8 games and still by the end of the season think they're pretty damn good and a championship contender, and they've proven that to be true even though they've come up short with the Super Bowl loss and the 2 losses in the NFC Championship game the last couple of years. So I don't think there's any doubt that this team can get back to that level where we're all talking about that maybe today or in the coming weeks or once we get to January. I think the Steve Wilks component of him being on the sideline was coincidental. I mean, I don't know what type of impact it had other than, I go to when Fox had him, Ambry Thomas makes maybe the play of his career, right? And enforcing that turnover, and it looked like he ran it back. And he did have the big interception in that Week 18 game at the Rams when the 49ers clinched at the end in overtime to salt that game away. But right up there, if it wasn't that play, it was the play yesterday, the play of his career. And to see Ambry Thomas showing emotion and showing love to Steve Wilks and that conversation that those two were having on the sideline, I don't know that it mattered tactically, but it seemed like it mattered just in terms of the optics. And, because Wilks is a fiery guy. Like, it's not like Wilks is somebody that, likes talking to players and so maybe just having him down there and the defense being put on notice, basically, that the reason he was put down there was because things weren't working out, had everybody flying around and playing at a different level. I don't know, just a theory. I tend to think it's more just coincidental. You add a guy like Chase Young to the mix, everything looks better. I think they simplified their game plan a little bit defensively. There was less blitzing, more timely blitzing, and they just got back to the basics that the 49er stalwarts, the guys that have been here for a long time, like to do. So I think it was more about that than where Wilks was. But, Wilks being able to interact maybe more one-on-one from an emotional standpoint with those players, maybe it had some benefit.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's our 49ers reporter. We've just been batting this around JD a little bit, and it's the idea of, okay, the 49ers have 4 big boy weapons, Deebo Samuel, McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, and we all agree that if you take somebody out of there, it just doesn't look the same. Let me just, what if you have everybody on this team healthy except Trent Williams? Then what? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to gauge the value of a skill position guy versus an important lineman. Would you rather have all your weapons but miss a huge offensive lineman, or maybe miss a weapon but have Trey? Just try to gauge the importance of all the players on offense.
Yeah, I think you need Trent Williams in the run game. I think Trent Williams helps make the 49er run game more dominant. I think in the passing game, they've shown that they can get by without him, but getting by without him doesn't make you good enough to where you're going to be a contender and win the Super Bowl, right? Because I think we'd all agree in the games that Trent Williams missed, the last 2, because he gutted it out and finished the game in Cleveland, the games that Trent Williams missed in Minnesota and Cincinnati was his absence to the naked eye, to the casual football observer, was his absence noticeable? I'll just ask you guys, because I'll give you I don't really think it was. I thought I thought Jalen Moore held up. I thought the 49ers were able to, there's things you can do with the tight ends and bring help and the way you kind of block certain plays. I thought, but at the same time, it makes the 49ers more ordinary, I think, offensively to not have him. I don't know. What did you guys think about that? You can get by, but are you really the best version of yourself?
No, that's a good call, Jay. But again, like the Cincinnati game, for example, I thought they took advantage of Trent not out there, and that pocket was collapsing. Whether you were trying to, not many holes for McCaffrey to get through, and when he dropped back to pass, Purdy.
You need everybody, Goo. Yeah, That's what it is. You need everybody, and you need 71.
Because
here's the thing about 71. 71, Trent Williams has an attitude, right? He's a hell of a nice guy off the field. He's smiling. He seems affable. But on the field, the dude's an absolute monster. I mean, he just is. He's a killer on the field. He's a monster. I think he helps establish their physical identity. We're just going to get up and we're going to knock you on your ass mentality. And I think having Debo back helps that mentality as well.
JD, no doubt. I want to ask you about Brock Purdy. He needed to bounce back. Not that the losses were all on him. 19 of 26, 296, as you guys mentioned, 3 touchdowns. But what I took away was the fact that on the first touchdown to Ayuk, he could have ran it where he rolled out left, threw it back across the field, got lucky touchdown. Why did I like Kyle going public just with the toolage of, it took me a while to get over that? Because I felt like that is something that'll stay with Brock, who had a good day. But what did you think of Kyle doing that out loud?
I loved it because because in the moment I thought to myself, and I love this when you're watching a game because it makes you feel like you're not crazy. That's always the way I put it. I'm watching the game like we all were, and I thought to myself, that's one of the worst decisions he's ever made.
Right.
Like, that's one of the worst plays. Like, you talk about a would-be pick or a should-be pick or whatever, and I texted a couple people. I said, my God, he got away with one there. And, it was kind of mixed response, right? Some 49er fans are like, well, that was, what would you say? Mahomes does stuff like that, or these elite quarterbacks does stuff. They do stuff like that, and everybody thinks it's great. So when, Brock does it, it's like, well, wait a minute, he should tone it down and not do it. And I said, well, he's not one of those guys, number one. Anyway, so to hear Kyle Shanahan after the game just so bluntly say, yeah, that was one of the worst decisions he's ever made, I think it's great. And, yeah, Brock Purdy needed a bounce-back game. I think we've seen, not to be redundant, probably at this point needs to play from ahead most of the time. Doesn't mean he can't come back against some teams here or there. And the whole thing looks different when everybody's in the right spot and the running game's there and you can throw the short passes and then he can make the off-schedule plays that he's so good at. Again, it's not an indictment on him. It doesn't mean that I don't think Brock Purdy's this or that or whatever. It's just when the whole thing is locked in, he's able to play at an elite level. When it's not completely locked in, then he looks more pedestrian, and if he's more pedestrian, then the 49ers, I think there are some question marks as to whether or not they can get to and win a Super Bowl. But for yesterday and for those first 5 games, they basically had everybody, and he looked elite. But no, I loved what Shanahan said because selfishly it was what I was thinking, to be perfectly honest.
Kyle Shanahan put Christian McCaffrey back in the game with 6 minutes left to try to get him an achievement that only Lenny Moore had done prior. They had scored. What'd you think of that?
I hated it. It's just me talking. I hated it. I like, and again, I get that everybody loved it and fans love it. And McCaffrey was appreciative of trying to get me the all-time record. And they're showing the sideline and everybody's laughing and everybody knows what's going on. I didn't think in the moment that the Jags knew what was going on. Like I until it got right down to their inside the 5-yard line, and then maybe they did. And I think that worked to the 49ers' benefit. I will give Kyle Shanahan credit in the sense that, they had a 4th and 5 and he was in the game and they went for it and they ran a running play. So I got the impression that Kyle Shanahan was trying to get him the record. Obviously, we all know that, and they addressed it afterwards. But I felt like he was also trying to be respectful about it in the plays, the types of play. Like we're going to go for it, but I'm not really going to trick it out the way that I would if we needed this touchdown to win the game. But that doesn't change the fact that I personally hated it. I know I'm in the minority. I know 49er fans are probably screaming. But, I mean, could you imagine if he gets hurt in that situation? Or could you imagine, and here's the thing, when you do something like that, and I don't know that the Jags knew in the moment, but when you do something like that, you run the risk of somebody taking a cheap shot on a guy that's going to put him out and put you guys in difficult position. And, if I was a Jags player, I'd have been really pissed. I would have been really pissed. And
well, you know how to stop him, JD, is keep him out.
No doubt. Okay. No. And I'm not saying pissed like I'm going to complain about it.
Okay.
I'm saying pissed like I'm going to knock him out.
Dirty play, okay.
I'm going to knock him on his ass and maybe twist him up a little bit. So, like that, and again, that's the heat of the moment, JD. right? And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but the heat of the moment, JD, can get a little angry, and the heat of the moment NFL player can get a little angry. And so, again, all I'm saying is the 49ers run the risk of somebody among the 11 players out there, or a coach maybe telling those guys to do it. They can run the risk of something happening to their best offensive player or best offensive skill player in Christian McCaffrey. So I understand all sides. I didn't like it. I understand why they did it. I understand why the fans love it. I understand why the media yucks it up with the players and the fans about it. It's like all one big, oh, yeah, all right, it's all funny, blowout. I get it. I get it. But I personally hated it.
Wow, Jay. Tell us how you really feel. I love it. Hey, last thing about Purdy. Evan, Steiny, and I were talking about this before the show. There were a couple times he got hit. He got leveled. And I was like, man, this dude's tough. Jeff Garcia-like. But he hit Kittle for a 66-yarder. And, Jay, I saw it. He stood in there, took the hit, and we were talking about, do you think that's one of his most impressive throws of his young career?
Yeah, it was a good throw. I mean, I didn't think I'll be honest. I thought it was a really good throw. I didn't think it was there was nothing all time that popped into my head at one. I'll give you the short answer on that one. I thought, yeah, good throw. Kind of jotted it down on my iPad as I'm taking my notes, but there wasn't something all time great or historic or anything about it. It was just good quarterback made a good throw. Touchdown. The play was there. Hell of a call. I'll tell you what. I thought the Niners, and you guys have probably talked about this. I thought the Niners won the game with the start that they got off to, but I think they won the game into the first half, beginning of the second half. They hold the Jags to a field goal. They go down, they kick a field goal to match. Basically, it rendered anything the Jags had done just completely useless. And then they come out with that first possession, and they hit the big ball to Kittle for a touchdown from 10-3, and feeling like, because that game did have a little of that feel like.
Oh, it did.
Hey, the Niners should be up more, and they're not.
They got the fumble.
All of a sudden, it's going to be 10-10, and the Jags are a comeback team themselves. So the end of the first half, holding them to a field goal. Yes, the fumble before that for sure, because the Jags looked like they had action. But then coming out and hitting the big ball to Kittle, 10-3 turns into 20-3, and I thought at that point, at 20-3, I thought it was night.
Hey, JD, let me get you out of here on this. I was thinking about this weekend and walking out of the office here on Friday, and I think everybody was encouraged about the Golden State Warriors. A lot of people liked that loss against Denver, and on Friday, everybody was kind of biting their fingernails about the 49ers and their 3-game losing streak, and it feels like now the Niners look fine, and the Warriors look like they're a team in a little trouble. What'd you make of the Warriors weekend?
It was a bad weekend. I mean, bottom line, bad weekend. Couple good defensive teams, couple teams with length, couple teams with size, and the Warriors got handled, I thought, in both games. And they got to figure out, though, first and foremost, to me it wasn't even so much about the size in terms of the 7-footers. It was more, I thought, the length and the ability of both the Cavs and the Timberwolves to attack. To me it was more wings and guards just putting their head down and getting to the bucket, which was something that Oklahoma City did to them a week prior. And the Warriors ended up winning the game at the end, but Oklahoma City was having their way. So I think that's one part of it. But to me, the issues are offense, and we've discussed it. It's even when this team was winning, where's the secondary scoring going to come from? Is Klay Thompson still a legitimate number 2? And TBD. Right? I mean, he hasn't been to this point. I mean, nobody has been to this point. All eyes on Andrew Wiggins. I know, Goo, I've heard you. This was maybe a week or so ago.
I was listening to you last night, too.
It's where is Wiggins? And the problem, though, is, and that's fair. I mean, I think those are the two guys that are going to get singled out that the Warriors need more from, because they're starters. They're guys that are getting paid. They're guys that in the past have been the number 2 option for the Warriors, or the 2 and the 3 option for the Warriors offensively. And look, the Warriors were getting by because their bench was dominant, and the bench the last 2 games was not dominant. They still won the battle of the bench points, but they weren't winning it 40-15 like they had been in some of these other games, which was allowing Klay Thompson to be solid. Because I really think Klay's been solid up until the last 2 games where it hasn't gone well, and it's allowed Wiggins to be, for the most part, absent. But I don't think there's any, to go back to the point I was going to mention about what you were saying, Goo, there's no other option other than those guys have to play better. Like, it's not like Jonathan Kuminga is playing great, because he's not, right? He's had some halves where he's been an A. He's had halves in the same games where he's been an F. So, at best, Kuminga's been a C player. So you're not replacing a C player in Kuminga with Wiggins, even if you make the case, and I think you can make the case, that Wiggins has been worse than a C level player to this point. But you don't make if Wiggins has been a D and Kuminga's been a C, you don't make a switch, because now if Kuminga had been an A, then all right, we can start having a conversation. So the point I'm getting at is they get those 2 guys, Klay and Wiggins, and I think even more Wiggins and Klay, have got to get going. And I think the Warriors need to start trying to get Wiggins involved. Like, is he hurt? Is there something going on? Did he not have the offseason that he wanted to because there were other things going on? Like, I think all those questions are going to start to continue to pop up. But as I talked about last night on Warriors Wrap-Up, this is the team. Like, this is the team. But maybe they make some moves down the line, but this you look up and they're healthy right now, and this is the team. So for the next 3 months between now and the trade deadline, which is 3 months away, February, they got to figure it out with what they have. I lean in a little bit on what Steve Kerr. They weren't, when they were 6-2. Were they playing great? No, they won a couple of close games. Maybe stole the game against Sacramento. Were they? Are they the worst? Are they now one of the worst teams in the West because they haven't looked great the last couple of games? No, I think it's somewhere in between. But the one thing that I am going to say all season, when this team's healthy, they got to be better than 6-5, because I'm still worried about what it's going to look like when they're not healthy. Because there's the 2 types of depth, right? You have and I think the Warriors have the depth where you have everybody in their place, and you want to play Trace Jackson Davis a little bit, fine. You want to play Podziemski a little bit, fine. The bench for the most part, beating other teams' benches, you like that. I think they have the quality depth that you like when you have everybody, especially if Wiggins and Klay Thompson were playing to their capabilities. What the question is, what kind of depth do they have when you start taking a starter or 2 away?
Man.
And that I don't know. And I know Warrior fans are thinking, well, I hope we don't find out.
Right.
But if you're 6-5 and then you start losing key guys, you're kind of looking at being maybe in the same position record-wise that you were last year, where you're fighting and scratching and clawing and you're trying to, save your season to just get into that 6th spot, which they ultimately did. I think the Warriors believe they have a better team than that. But so much of, we talk about the bench and Chris Paul and the young guys and how's it all going to fit together, and Steph is still phenomenal, all of that stuff. But the price of admission stuff in the plan for the Warriors to be contenders was, Wiggins is going to be closer to what he was 2 years ago, and Klay Thompson's going to be a more consistent version of what he was last year, and they're 0 for 2 in these first 11 games with those 2 top to bottom.
Man.
All right, JD, great stuff.
Thanks.
And we'll be listening tomorrow when the Warriors take on Minnesota at Chase.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Ballast Point Brewing Company tomorrow, by the way.
I'm going to come by and see you. I'll be out there, Jay.
6 o'clock, Warriors Live at Ballast Point. Stop by, have a brew, get some food. I'll be out there. I'll be out there before 6, getting things set up, and walking distance to Chase. Looking forward to it. Goose, stop by.
Play-in tournament.
We'll have one. Yeah, it's the in-season tournament game. Big in-season tournament ramifications tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks, JD. Appreciate it, buddy.
You got it.